I am a character design whore. Even before I read about how their personality or their character is written in the story, if I see a character design that really vibes with me and I just love, I'm already in love with you. I don't care who you are. Hello and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. It has been a while since I did an isolated review or even a bookish related review on this channel, and it is a portion of my content creation that I'm trying to revive because I did enjoy doing those. Now, as some of you might know, I used to try to read all the 7 Seas releases as they came out, and so 𝕉𝕠𝕠𝕬 or 𝕒𝔻𝕬𝕍 would have been the first new danmei series I would have read this year. But what happened was 7 Seas started doing something, or I guess they switched things up, where they started offering special editions on the first volume versus last volume on some of their series, and 𝕉𝕠𝕠𝕬 was one of those. I'd pre-ordered the original edition and I was getting prepared to start reading it when I saw other people posting about the special edition. It was really pretty and I decided I wanted that version instead. And by the time it arrived, I was already reading something else and haven't found somewhere to fit it into my TBR so far. So I haven't read it yet, and that's why I haven't done an isolated review for it. Although I do plan to read it sometime this year, hopefully by the first half. By the time the first half of the year is complete, I will find some time to read at least that first volume. But since I didn't read that, the first new series from 7 Seas that I've read this year will be Legend of Exorcism, which is what this video is going to be about. An in-depth review or isolated review of the first volume of Legend of Exorcism. So, for my isolated reviews, I usually do a synopsis and then I'll do like a generic overview for people who haven't read the series or this first volume, completely spoiler free, so you have an idea of what to expect from it. And then I do an in-depth review using the CAWPILE rating system and how I figured or how I decided on my rating for this first volume of the series. I usually try to keep that spoiler free as well, but I also do that portion of the review with the assumption that whoever is listening to it has already read that first volume and can relate to some of the things that I'll be talking about in my in-depth review. So do bear that in mind before watching that portion of the video. If there are spoilers in that portion of the video, I will put it on screen so you can be prepared for it. I don't necessarily want to spoil anyone's reading experience without giving them prior heads up, so that was what that was for. But I will start by talking a little bit about the book itself. I have a little more to show than usual because I also picked up the special edition for this one, and it is a gorgeous special edition. The colors of the cover are warm and so beautiful. So you have like greens, oranges, and browns, and then gold highlights on the cover as well, which I hope you can see very well. But honestly, it is just so beautiful. So like the title on the side, the title on the front of the book, the name of the author, and the title of the series, I believe as well, all in that gold highlight. The back as well, where you have the synopsis, there is this spirally design around it that also has those gold flecks. And also even on some of the illustrations on the front and the back as well, it is honestly just such a gorgeous book. The illustration itself is also very, very beautiful. Here is a full version inside of the book. I don't know if I'm holding that up to the camera in the right angle, but the illustrator did an amazing job. We also have a map in this series. I hope that is something that 7 Seas is planning to do more often. I think there are a lot of series that could benefit from having a map, and I'm really happy to see that they included one with this. Although I'm not sure if that was something that already came with the original series, so like this one as well as Ballad of Sword and Wine, and that's why they were included in the English editions, or if it's something that was added because they thought readers could benefit from it. I'm not sure. If you're someone who was already familiar with the original story, please do feel free to share your opinion on that in the comments. Here is also another, or the last colored illustration inside of the series before you start going to all of the black and white ones. But yeah, it is a very, very beautiful edition, and I just love how it turned out and the choices that were made with the color and the scheme for this edition. And now, obviously, because this is a special edition, I also have, excuse me, some more things to show. So you have your usual bookmark. I like that you get a bookmark with this first volume. You can use it for the rest of the series, and I do enjoy that. You have a sheet of chibi stickers. I always love this very, very much, so I like that. A notebook. Now, I'm not usually a huge fan of notebooks in special editions. All the other ones in special editions that I've gotten from 7 Seas so far, I just have them stored somewhere. I haven't really used them. I'm picky about the type of notebooks that I use, and I tend to buy those by myself, so I haven't really had anything to use them for. But since this one came with the first volume, I decided to use it to take notes on the series as I read it, and that is working out pretty well for me so far. So I took about about 5 pages of notes on this first volume, and if I revisit it before I read the second volume, or just go through some of my annotations and I want to write something out, I can also go back and write those down. So I am using it for that reason. But for my favorite thing that came with this special edition, that would be these trading cards. I believe this is the first time 7 Seas has done something like this on their special editions, and I hope that they can do more of this items on their special editions. Not necessarily trading cards, but just something different, not the standard like posters or postcards they usually have on all of their special editions. I thought this was really nice. It works really, really well for the series, the way it was created, the colors that were used, the way the characters were illustrated. It just creates excitement for the series and makes readers want to buy it because it's pretty. So these are your 2 main characters, Hong Hong-jun and Lee Jin-young. And on the back of each trading card, it just says Legend of Exorcism. And they're mostly still using the same color scheme of the cover, which is absolutely gorgeous. There's honestly nothing to hate about these trading cards. Under each of the trading cards, under the illustration on each of the trading cards, you have the character's name as well as their affiliation and the spiritual devices that they use in the series as well, which is why I thought that it matches the series so well. That's information that you want to have on hand about each character, so this is honestly just perfect for the series. And then you also have 3 character cards for, or 3 trading cards for the remaining members of the Department of Demonic Exorcism in the series. For some reason, that name sounds weird when I say it out loud, although reading it felt just fine. But you have Shui Yong-se, who is just absolutely pretty. And then you have Atai. That is a shortened version of his name. I believe the full name is 𝕒𝕓𝕠𝕦𝕥. I hope I'm saying that last name correctly. I feel like I swapped over some vowels there, but I will check to make sure that it's correct. And for my personal favorite, not because of his character or anything that I read in the book, but just going by the character, the design of his character on this trading card, I am obsessed with this design. I am a character design whore. Even before I read about how their personality or their character is written in the story, if I see a character design that really vibes with me and I just love, I'm already in love with you. I don't care who you are. And that is Murugan. Look at this man. Oh my god. The braids in his hair, his tiny hoop earrings. He just looks gorgeous. I love him. And he's a pretty amazing character in the series too, so it works out well all around for me. But yeah, those are all the things that came with the special edition. And now before I go into my generic overview, which is going to be spoiler free, I will start by reading the synopsis on the back of the first volume. Okay. Two fates entwined, one dangerous mission. In the mystical Taihang Mountains, where magic flows and powerful Yao roam, Hongjun has grown up sheltered from the human world. A half Yao himself, he's never had reason to leave the Taihang Mountains until the mountain's ruler sends him on a dangerous mission, which is to hide his true nature and join the Great Tang Department of Demonic Exorcism in Chang'an. Upon arriving in the bustling capital, Hongjun meets 𝕒𝕠𝕠𝕦, a luckless soldier with no spiritual power who is tasked with leading a team of extraordinary exorcists. Together, they and their enigmatic companions must face the dark forces threatening the city. But as a bond begins to bloom between Hongjun and 𝕒𝕠𝕠𝕦, Hongjun wonders if he can trust 𝕒𝕠𝕠𝕦 with the truth of who and what he is, he being half Yao himself, even though they're trying to exorcise other Yao. So that is the synopsis of the series. For my generic overview, I really did enjoy this series. So 𝕒𝕠𝕠𝕦 is a writer that I have been looking forward to reading for a very long time. He has come highly recommended by other danmei readers, and I unfortunately did not get a chance to complete any one of his series before they started getting licensed officially in English, but that also made the ones that got licensed and are due to release in 2025 some of my most anticipated releases for the year, Legend of Exorcism being one of them. I didn't buy the manhwa. I know Seven Seas also has the license for the manhwa, although if I'm remembering correctly, the manhwa is incomplete, so I'm not sure what they plan to do with that. But I decided to buy the novel instead of the manhwa, even though the manhwa also looks absolutely beautiful. I prefer to read the novel, and I had so much fun with this first volume. I was really excited when I opened the first volume and there was a preface. So if I already have like a vested interest in a series or an author, just getting an insight into what inspires them is something that is exciting for me, and that's exactly what the preface was able to do for me. So in the preface, he was able to share his excitement for the series getting an English translation. Also the fact that this is the first series, I believe, in order of publication in the Exorcist series, and I think the other series in the Exorcist series will be 𝕒𝕠𝕠𝕦 Records. I was going to check, but I didn't remember to do that. But I don't think there's a specific order the series have to be read in. Now, don't quote me on that because I did not fact check this. So I'm going to do that and try to put a fact check on the screen. But then I'm sure a lot of people have probably read some of 𝕒𝕠𝕠𝕦's work. So if you're one of those people and you're familiar with both series and you know if there's a connection between both of them, or if there is a specific reading order that you suggest, feel free to put that in the comments for other people to read about. But yeah, he mentions things like that and also inspiration that he got regarding the series. So I wrote some of these things down because I can't remember them off the top of my head. Let's see. So he mentions that the series is set in the Tang Dynasty in China and was also inspired by deities and demons of ancient Eastern legends, and also just goes a little bit more into the historical setting and atmosphere for the series. He mentions being inspired by poets like Bai Zhuyi and the literary giant Li Bai, and a very specific poem by the latter, which he goes a little bit into in his preface, and I'm going to read that out because I think that poem itself set the tone for the series and just got me so excited about the series. I mentioned in my review on Instagram that just from reading the preface, I was already in love with this series because I loved the insights that the writer had to share about the series before I even started reading the story. And I love that the preface was able to do that for me. And it just tied this first volume together so well. for me as a reader. I know that's not something that probably matters to some people, or the preface is even something that some people might skip, but if you're interested in reading it, it's just one page, very short, but I found it to be very impactful in setting the tone for this first volume and quite possibly the rest of the series as a whole. And I am now going to stop blabbing about what the preface did for me and read this poem that was written by Li Bai and said inspired the Exorcist series. So this is the paragraph in the preface. The Exorcist maxim in Legend of Exorcism comes from a poem written by the Tang Dynasty literary giant Li Bai. It represents one of my favorite viewpoints on life and death during the time that I was writing the Exorcist series. Nothing lasts forever. The myriad things and all living beings are only guests on the shore of the winding river of time. Every feast will come to an end, and flourishing scenes of abundance will one day be things of the past, never to return. But they will leave many beautiful memories we can revisit time and time again. Welcome to Great Tang's Department of Demonic Exorcism. Backed by... Okay, you don't need to read all of that. You can read it by yourself. I just loved the way it was included in the preface, and again, it was just something that made me super excited about the series. I honestly don't know what else to say about the overall experience of reading the book. I felt like it met my expectations. I am someone who loves Exorcist stories as a whole, although I've never read one from a Chinese historical setting. I've read a lot of historical Japanese Exorcist series. I've watched animes, read mangas with that kind of setting, and I've always loved them. The traditional historical settings in those stories, the character designs, their outfits, the idea of familiars fighting with human beings to exorcise demons, or just all of those really rich historical culture about different traditions. I've always enjoyed reading stories like that, so I like that about this story. But his writing was also very beautiful, and I might be biased by thinking that just because, again, the preface already did so much for me. I felt like I was going to enjoy this book regardless. I ended up rating this 4.5 stars using the CAWPILE rating system. I'll break that down a little bit more before I start talking through each category of the CAWPILE rating system. So C is for, oh, I forgot to mention, I haven't done one of these videos in a while. So the CAWPILE rating system is a rating system that was created by, I can't remember the creator's name. She's a YouTube creator here. I'm going to put all of that information in the description below, but it was a rating system created by a fellow YouTube creator, and it basically breaks down different aspects of storytelling into like 7 parts, and then you rank each of those parts from 1 to 10 and use it to figure out a rating for your books. I'm not doing a great job of talking about this, but I have done a good job of talking about the rating system in some of my other isolated reviews, which I will link below, and you can look more into them. Again, all of that information will be in the description. But CAWPILE is literally just an acronym. So CAWPILE, and each of those letters stands for something. So starting with C, which stands for the characters in the story, I gave that 8.5 out of 10 points. I thought they were in between being really good characters and characters that I would think about often. For A, that is usually art or atmosphere. Art if you have a story like a graphic novel or manga or something like that. But for a story like this, it's just the atmosphere. I gave that a 9.5. I thought it was kind of unique, and I want to read more in the setting, and that's why I gave it 9.5. For writing, I gave that a 9. I thought it was excellent writing. For the plot, I also gave that 9 points. I thought it was a very good plot and also a little bit unique. For intrigue, I gave it 8 points because I am interested in reading more in the series. For logic, I gave that 7 points, and that ended up being the lowest rating that I gave for any category in the first volume because I have some questions. Although there are no holes in the story so far, there are some questions that I would still like to get answered. And it's not because they weren't answered in this first volume. I know that chances are they're not going to get answered anytime soon because arriving at some of those answers is one of the main plots of the story. So it might take some time to get to those answers, but I would still like to get those answers. I hope that made sense. But the last letter in the rating system is E, which is for enjoyment, and I rated that 8 points because I had a really good time reading the book. And that brings me to a total of 59 points. So the average of all of those 7 categories was 8.43, and that landed in about the 4.5 star range. I believe it was about 0.02 or 3 points shy of moving into 4.75. So it performed really well in the rating system, and that will be my generic review for the series. Now for the in-depth review, where I'll talk a little bit more about some of the categories in depth. Even though this video is already starting to get long, I will try to go through it as quickly as I possibly can after I have a drink of water. It has been a while since I've had to talk this long on camera, and I'm really struggling, so I will be right back. Okay, I'll start with the category of characters. You have your 2 main characters, Jinglong and Hongjun, but some other characters that got pretty decent screen time in the entire volume will be the other members of the Department of Demonic Exorcism, as well as a 𝕒𝕉𝕠𝕦𝕥 that followed Hongjun on his quest to Chang'an from the Taihang Mountains. I think I'm remembering that correctly. Yes, Taihang Mountains. So when he was leaving Taihang Mountains, there was a 𝕒𝕉𝕠𝕦 that he had rescued when he was younger that insisted on going with him. And boy, are we grateful for that, because Hongjun is a smart person, but because he hasn't been raised with humans, he's very naive and doesn't know a lot about their customs that the 𝕒𝕉𝕠𝕦 was able to guide him about. Otherwise, his trip and his journey to Chang'an would have been an absolute disaster, and even his attempts to assimilate into the human environment in the city would have been absolutely disastrous as well. Even with the 𝕒𝕉𝕠𝕦 being there with him, he still got into some trouble. So I'm just grateful that the 𝕒𝕉𝕠𝕦 was there with him, and I just really love him as a character. He's very pure-hearted, very smart, very kind and gentle. And even though I'm calling him naive, that is not an insult. This is coming from a place of love. It's a very endearing comment, and you can see that in how protective the other members of the department are of him, because he's just such a kind and pure soul. Jinglong is also similarly a very kind person who hasn't had the best life, I guess is what you would say. He's an orphan, and the synopsis does mention that he doesn't have any spiritual powers. I don't know if that's necessarily something that's meant to be common in Great Tang at the time. Would it be helpful in his role as the leader of the department? Sure. But even without that, he's a very strong and brave and smart person. But for some reason, he still tends to be looked down upon by his peers and others around him for some reason. I don't know if that's something that's born of jealousy or whatever reason it is. I hope that's something that's explored a little bit more, because even though to some extent I can understand why he's ridiculed because of some of the things that he said, the extent to which he's ridiculed doesn't really make sense to me. Like, I can't put it together. Like, is it really necessary to ridicule him this much for just being set in his own ways? Or maybe this was also something that was mentioned a little bit in the first volume. I think other people also tend to get the impression that he feels like he's better than them in some way, because he's very, I don't even know if standoffish is the word to use there. He's very stoic and not necessarily the most open person, although he was just very different with Hongjun. But then I also think that's because he's such a pure and kind-hearted person, and I just really love both of their characters, their interactions with each other. Hongjun's interaction with the 𝕒𝕉𝕠𝕦𝕥 that he came down with from the 𝕐𝕐𝕐 mountains, they are really so precious together. The other members of the department of demonic exorcism, they are not just random people who came to 𝕒𝕠𝕦𝕥 because they didn't have anything to do. They have their own motivations and reasons for joining the exorcism department. They were really starting to get into a little bit some of their motivations, and how overall they're all united in one goal that they have to achieve as a department in the overall plot of the story. But I loved all of the interactions between all of them. In the department, we got to see some different pairings when they were going on missions, and even though some of them were more awkward than each other, they were funny, and some of them were more affectionate than each other because they were just friendly with each other. There were different dynamics that you could see within the department, and they were all very interesting to read. I just really loved the way the characters were written. You have a vested interest in all of their storylines, even the ones that are in the main characters being Jinlong and Hongjun. The less main characters, although they're still pretty important, and like I said, they got decent screen time in the series. I like the way their stories have been put forward. Again, you're very interested in the way their stories will play out, and I love that about the series. And even other minor characters like the Emperor and the Empress, I feel like they have ties to 𝕐𝕐𝕐 mountains from some of the things that happened in this first volume. And even though they didn't get as much screen time as some of those other characters, I also liked the way that they were placed in the story, or even introduced in the story, enough that they're not forgettable characters, and you can probably have an inkling to the fact that they're going to play more important roles in the future. So that was why I thought the characters and the way that they were introduced or explored in this first volume were really good, and their characters I would think about often. Now, for the atmosphere in the series, I thought it was unique. Not unique in the sense that I think the setting of exorcism is unique, but the way the author went about exorcism in this story is unique to me personally. Now, it might not be unique to people who are very familiar with Chinese exorcism stories or some of the demons or deities used in the series, but they are unique to me, they are new to me, and I love learning about things like that. So I found it to be very unique and very interesting to learn about those things in a different culture, which is why I gave it a 9.5. And yes, I am very, very interested in reading more about the story within that setting and just the plot as a whole. Now, moving on to writing, I thought the writing in this was excellent. I already mentioned the fact that I liked the way the characters were written, the atmosphere and the setting of the story, the historical setting, the fantastical setting, so like the exorcism part. I think you can call that fantasy. The exorcism theme of the series, you can probably call that kind of fantasy. I enjoyed all of those different aspects of the series and the way that they were written and explored in this first volume. But then I also thought that the writer did such an amazing job of blending almost lyrical parts of his writing and also sometimes poetic parts of his writing, and then later like just really animated and comical parts of the writing together to just really work together to make for a really enjoyable experience. He might describe like a season or maybe a building, a tree somewhere, and it will be very poetic or lyrical in the way that that particular scene was written. And then in the next scene, you're having an interaction between some of the members of the Department of Exorcism, or maybe someone is doing something really funny, and it is just so animated to the extent that you can see it playing out in front of you. And knowing that this has a danmei that I haven't watched, by the way, it just almost felt like I was watching the danmei in my head while I was reading some of those things. That's what I mean by them being so animated. But at the same time, they all work together so well to make the writing feel whole and enjoyable. And that's why I thought the writing was excellent. I also like the fact that all of the characters stand out to me, even though you can tell that some of them are the main characters, and others, even though they're not main characters, they're still important characters. I like when stories are able to do that. Like, the other characters in the story are important enough that you should know what role they play in the overall story, and they have a story that you are invested in, so they're not just background characters that you can easily forget about. And that's another thing that I really enjoyed about the writing in this volume. Excuse me. The plot, I thought it was very good and a little bit unique, and I thought it was very unique in the sense that exorcism, obviously you're just trying to get rid of demons or 𝕒𝕍𝕠𝕦𝕥 in this story and exorcise them, but there is a bigger plot and then little tidbits for everyone's different storylines that you still have to resolve. So even though they're trying to exorcise 𝕒𝕍𝕠 along the way, everyone has their own interests or their own specific goal that they came to the capital city for. And I find that aspect of their different storylines to be unique, especially revolving around Hongjun. There are a lot of questions around him and his origin that are unanswered. You know he's half 𝕒𝕠 because the synopsis already told you that, but he's also half human, but we don't know who the human was that is one of his parents. Is that person alive? Are they dead? Were they an important person? And he also has powers that are very interesting that I would like to know more about. So it's just little things like that that I think make the story unique and more intriguing to learn more about down the line. So that's why I thought the plot was a little bit unique. Intrigue, I already mentioned a little bit of this in all the other categories that I've talked about. I want to read more from the series because I'm enjoying all the different aspects of it that have been explored, like I already talked about, the characters, the setting, the atmosphere, the writing. For that reason, I am intrigued in learning more about some of these characters and also in getting some of these questions that aren't super clear answered. And so for that reason, I would love to keep reading more in the series. Logic, there aren't holes in the sense that there wasn't anything that didn't make sense in the series, but again, I still have questions, and some of those questions would be, who is Hongjun's human parent? And some other questions that I don't want to specify because there will be spoilers, but I'm going to look at my notebook for a little bit and see if there are any of those questions that aren't spoilers. Okay, so there is a being called Mara that keeps coming up in the series. I have an idea of who this person is meant to be, but I'm still pretty blind on who they are, and I would like to have some of the details of who this person is meant to be answered as well. Let's see. Yeah, I'm just gonna skip the rest because they are spoilers. But yeah, I have questions that I would like to have answered, but didn't necessarily take away from my enjoyment of this first volume. And then lastly, enjoyment. I mean, going by everything that I've already said in each of the categories, I think it's obvious to see that I had a really good time reading this first volume of the series, and I cannot wait to read more of the series. But that was my in-depth review of Legend of Exorcism and how I came about my rating of 4.5 stars for the first volume. Have you read the series? Do you plan to read it? Did you already read it before it got officially licensed? Were you familiar with either the donghua or the manhwa of the series? I know both of them are incomplete. I believe the donghua only got 2 seasons. I'm not sure how far exactly the manhwa got before it was canceled, or is it on hiatus? I'm not sure. If that's information that you have, feel free to share it in the comment section. And if there is anything that I said in my review that personally resonated with you, feel free to talk about that in the comments as well. Or if you have some dissenting opinions about something that I said, again, comment about that. Please be nice about it. Anyway, that is the end of today's video, and whatever day you find yourself watching this, make it a great one, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.